We have a special guest, Cory Doctorow, coming on right now. Cory, how you doing?
Hi, how are you? Very well, thanks.
Hey,
Thank you for
Cory, how
coming
are
on.
you? Huge fan of Cory. Seriously, I am like a huge fan, but much appreciated, by the way, you sparing us some time
No, it's
out of your
absolutely my
busy
pleasure.
schedule. Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm going to get right into it. I mean, look, I've pretty much read everything. FYI, group, I don't know, there's like a couple hundred of you here, but there'll be more of you later. His bio, his site, or anything you guys need about Cory is in the show notes. Please go check it out. Not only Cory is an award-winning author. I know, how many books have you written so far, Cory?
A couple of dozen at this point.
Couple dozen. Okay, he's an economist as well, so he knows. Yeah, no, you don't know
No.
economics. You know a little bit of economics.
I know a lot about economics. I am not an economist.
You're not an economist.
I dropped out of
I
4
read
undergraduate
somewhere that
programs and never got a degree, so I'm a nothing.
Okay, all right, cool. But so Cory came up with this word that we have actually used previously without his permission on our show. Cory came up with this word called enshittification. All right, and American Dialect Society picked enshittification as the word of 2023. People, okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that means, how it applies to us as rideshare drivers or gig workers. And he's written an amazing article. Actually, one of his books is named Bezel. We're going to talk about the Uber bezel, why Uber is a bezel. And then we're going to talk a little bit about this Lyft fuzzy math, because in the green room, we kind of explained to him what it is. He says he has a word for it. So we can't wait to hear it. So Cory, introduce yourself, and let's get it going.
Sure. Yeah. Hi, I'm Cory Doctorow. I work for a nonprofit called the Electronic Frontier Foundation, where we work on digital rights, including digital workers' rights. And I've worked there for more than 25 years in lots of different capacities. I was our UN delegate, and I was the European director. So I worked in Westminster in the British Parliament, and in Brussels in the European Parliament. I write lots of books. And as you heard, last year I coined this term enshittification. It did big numbers. I think it means that I'm now doomed to get a poop emoji on my headstone someday. And enshittification, it tries to answer the question, like, how is it that the platforms that really make up the internet are all going so bad so quickly? Right? Everything that we use is just all turning to rot all at once. Ed Zitron calls it the rot economy. So enshittification kind of posits this as like a disease, like a malaise. And as we all know, having lived through the COVID pandemic, a disease, there's 3 ways of talking about it. One is the symptoms, right? So what it looks like from the outside. One is the mechanism. It's what's going on inside the body when it has the disease. And the third is the contagion, right? How does it spread? Why is it happening now? And so enshittification symptoms, I think, would be pretty familiar to a lot of us, right? It's when you have a platform that is very good at first to its end users. So platforms are these, they're called like two-sided markets. They've got businesses on one side and customers on the other, or end users on the other, and the market sits between them. So like eBay sits between people selling, Pez dispensers and people buying Pez dispensers, and Uber sits between drivers and riders, and Amazon between like merchants and buyers, and so on. So you have these platforms, and they at first are very good to their end users. So I'll give you an example. When Facebook kicked off, originally it was just for college kids. Actually, Mark Zuckerberg founded it so that he and his creepy friends could non-consensually rate the fuckability of their fellow Harvard undergraduates. And it got worse after that. So in 2006, they said, okay, we're going to open this to the general public. You don't have to have a .edu American college address. We're just going to open this up to the general public. So they said, hey, all of you using the internet, you're already on social media, but you're all using this platform called MySpace. And you might like MySpace, but maybe you haven't considered that it's owned by this evil, crapulent, senescent Australian billionaire who spies on you with every hour that God sends, named Rupert Murdoch. And if you come to Facebook, we're going to give you a really square deal. On Facebook, we will never, ever spy on you. That is the Facebook value proposition. We are like MySpace, but we'll never spy on you. So show up to Facebook. Tell us what it is that matters to you, right? Tell us who you like and who you want to hear from. And then anytime those people post something that they want other people to read, we're just going to show it to you. So Facebook has what economists call like a surplus, right? That's just like they've got some stuff that they can use. They don't have to spend it on rent or on salaries. They've got money left over, and they're spending it on their end users. They're making things good for their end users. So all tech platforms do this as a way to start their growth, right? They make a good offer to their end users. And by the way, jump in and stop, because I can talk about this.
No. I'm
my-
actually, Facebook is a good start when it comes to
Okay,
enshittification,
sure.
right?
Yeah.
Because, and then you can give us a little bit like more on Facebook, but then I really want to actually talk to you about Uber,
I'll get
because
to
like
Uber.
Uber is a platform, as we all know, and you correctly said, two-sided marketplace, right?
Yeah, indeed. So like Uber, well, let's talk a little about different lock-in strategies here. So like, how does Facebook locks users in by getting those users to just hang out together such that it would be really hard to all agree on when it's time to leave. This is something economists call the collective action problem. So like you and your friends, and there's like 6 of you in a group chat, and you can't even agree on like where to go for dinner on Friday. Whereas if there's like 200 of you on Facebook, and some of you are there because you like moved from another country and it's how you stay in touch with a family back home, and some of you are there because you got like a rare disease and this is where your support group is, some of you are there because that's where like your kid's little league game organizes the carpool. It's really hard for like all 200 of you to organize to leave. So even though you hate Facebook, you're hanging out on Facebook. That's Facebook lock-in. There's other kinds of lock-in. Amazon wants to sell you a year's worth of shipping in advance, so that anytime you buy something from someone else, you feel like a sucker because you already paid for the shipping on Amazon. And Uber, they had a different idea, right? They took like $33 billion from the Saudi royal family, laundered it through Masayoshi Son and a venture capital fund called SoftBank, and then lost 41 cents on every dollar that they brought in for 13 years. While public transit got like starved of investment, because why would you invest in public transit when Uber is so cheap? And medallion taxis all went into business, and so there's just like no way to get around except for Uber, and so that's the way you lock in Uber customers.
While we're at Uber, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I have read, like I said, I've read pretty much everything you've
Yeah.
written. I mean, it's public info. You have said Uber will never be profitable, right?
Yeah. So
And so last 2 quarters,
Yeah.
supposedly they have turned profitable, and we as drivers, we know why. Okay, they have these wonderful, amazing algorithms, right? They on one side of the market, they can charge as much as they can with elasticity, obviously, and then on the other end, they have lowered the fares to the point that we're like giving rides to humans for like $3 now, literally, no joke. I mean, we talk about it all the time. So do you think they truly have turned profitable at this point, or they're just kind of smoking some crack pipe?
Yeah, they're realizing all these like one-time gains. Like they're saying things like, oh, well, there's like an Uber-like company in China, and we tried to do a business in China, and we couldn't make a living at it. So we sold our shares in a stock swap with this Uber-like company in China. So now we own all these illiquid shares in, Didi, right? They're not traded on the market. No one knows what they're worth. Well, we're going to assign a value to them. Right. And so we say these shares are now worth $1 bazillion. And then we go, oh, look, we made some gains this quarter because the shares, the imaginary gains in these shares offset our actual real dollar losses.
Yeah. Well, they do the, mark to mark hocus pocus on every quarter, right? So if the quarter is kind of light, they just kind of move the assets around, or the unrealized gains and losses are created every single quarter. I mean, I have a Wall Street background, so I follow them. Obviously, I listen to their conference calls. But it does seem like after, like you correctly stated, $33 billion losing 41 cents on every dollar, and your enshittification actually is perfect for Uber, because when it first started, it was great for everybody. It was great for I call those days subsidized fantasy land, right? It was great for the riders, great for the drivers, because we made tons of money. And then comes 2019, and then they go public, and then everything changed. Right.
Yeah.
The last 5 years, we're getting starved as drivers, without a question.
So the goal of these companies, irrespective of whether we're talking about Uber or, Boeing, is not just to be like too big to fail. And it's not just to be too big to jail. It's to be too big to care, right? To not have to care if your drivers are angry because they've invested in a car and you're one of 2 or 3 games in town and they don't feel like they can stop driving for you. Your customers have to keep paying the fares because there's few options to get around. And like that's that's the dream, I think, of capitalists, is to not be capitalists, but to be feudalists, right? To be feudal lords. A feudal lord doesn't have to care whether the harvest is good or bad. His peasants owe him the rent, right?
Yeah.
And so, if you're the landlord of a coffee shop, you don't have to care if the coffee shop is doing well or not. If that coffee shop goes out of business because there's a better coffee shop across the street, that's good for you, right? Now you've got an empty storefront on the same block as a really good coffee shop, and you can rent that out for more than the capitalist who is working in your shop was making. So rents are always better than profits.
Yeah.
That's the goal here. So Uber is in this phase of the enshittification cycle where they're good to their customers, right? Good to the end users. They're offering really cheap fares. And then they start to be better to their business customers because they want to lure a lot more drivers into the road. And so you have things like surge pricing. And so surge pricing at the outset, I don't have to tell you, was a way to pay drivers more, but it was also a way to charge customers more. Now, Uber could hypothetically say, okay, on this ride, we're not going to lose 42 cents. We're going to lose 75 cents per dollar. And so we're going to pay the drivers more. We're not going to charge the passengers more. But they're actually like making things slightly worse for the passengers in order to make things better for the drivers. And for the passengers, you now have the situation where, like, the part of surge pricing that isn't BS is that if you offer drivers more money, more drivers will come out onto the streets. And so they're in times where it's really tough to get a ride, you really can get a ride with Uber. So now they're making things worse for their end users, better for their business customers, but they're locking in the business customers too. And so once those business customers are locked in, so Facebook, the way that they did this was they said to, the advertisers, hey, do you remember when we told these rubes that we weren't going to spy on them? That was a lie. We're actually spying on them from asshole to appetite. Give us a couple of bucks and we'll target an ad to anyone you want. And because we're such good-natured slobs, we've got this whole building full of engineers, policing ad fraud. So you give us $1 to show an ad to a specific kind of person, and that person's going to see that ad. And so that's being good to the business customers. But once the business customers are locked in, right? So once the drivers are locked in, once the advertisers and publishers are locked into Facebook, once the merchants are locked into Amazon, things get worse for them too. Yeah. And the platform pulls out as much value as they can, not just from end users, but also from business customers. And the idea is to leave behind like this kind of homeopathic residue of value, just enough to keep everyone locked in, but not a penny more. Everything else has to go to the shareholders. Yeah. And the problem for firms that are pursuing the strategy is that they are in a very what economists would call like a brittle equilibrium, right? Like trying to figure out exactly how much value you need to leave in to keep everyone locked in. It's really hard to predict because you're surfing this edge just between like, I hate this and I can't stop using it, and I hate this and I am going to stop using it. Yeah. And so that happens with drivers all the time. I live in Burbank, which is a little town on the outskirts of LA. And we got a train station that goes down to San Diego. So I write science fiction.
Are you really in Burbank? We're literally like 10 miles apart. I'm 10 miles from Burbank Airport. We definitely got to have lunch now.
Yeah. So, we got a train station. It goes down to San Diego. So like when I go down for like Comic-Con, because I'm a science fiction writer, I speak at Comic-Con, I go down. So I come back from Comic-Con one time, and there's a cab rank there because there's 13 licensed cabs in Burbank. None of them are there. I try to call their dispatch. They're gone. There's sometimes there used to be a bus, but it's a Sunday and the bus service has been dialed down in Burbank because it's so easy to get an Uber. And there's also no Ubers today. There's just nothing. I spent an hour standing on a corner trying to get it. There's just nothing. So that's where the equilibrium breaks, right? Yeah. This is where the whole thing turns into a pile of shit. And the difference between this and say MySpace is that when MySpace became useless, it collapsed. And instead, what we're getting under this kind of enshittified capitalism are these zombie companies that are not good, but are not dead. And they're just kind of shambling along.
So what stage do you think Uber is in? Because look, I mean, I have a relationship with these companies. I know their executives all the way to the CEO level. I've interviewed them, right? So they think everything is great because, they say, look, last year we had only 5 million drivers globally. Today we have 6.5 million drivers. Because if it's so bad, why are so many more people are doing or Ubering or driving for us, right? Well, I have my reasons for it, but I want to hear yours. What do you think it is?
I think there's broader macroeconomic phenomena, right? Like, I just think that I don't think it's like inflation so much as sort of asset inflation or major cost inflation. So rent, education, and healthcare costs have left people so debt burdened, along with the increase in interest rates, that has meant that anyone carrying a balance on a credit card suddenly is paying a lot more. Or anyone who had to like roll a loan over is paying a lot more, and people are just taking every hour that they can and trying to squeeze out as many nickels as they can from it. This is like it's being felt all over. So like I said, I'm a science fiction writer, and science fiction has this old tradition of having these conventions. That's where Comic-Con comes from, and they're run by volunteers for the most part. And so the big one's called the World Science Fiction Convention, or WorldCon, and it's volunteers put together bids to do the next one. And normally there's like 10 years worth of bids kind of in the offing, and everyone knows they're going. There's about 4 right now for the WorldCon, and nothing coming up behind it. Like, we might just never, like, this thing that's been going since the 30s might be done, because no one's got any extra time, right? So because everyone is in such dire straits. So I think that's the, when that's the macroeconomic phenomenon, right? That's the thing that's going on that taps into why drivers are driving at higher rates than they were before, why people are more interested in taking precaritized, casualized labor, is because they're just trying to squeeze in any side hustle they can to grind out another nickel, so that their balance doesn't mount on the loans that they can't even pay the interest on, let alone the principal. I think that's
do you think these gig companies, I mean, Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, they're the 3 biggies, let's say. Do you think that, I mean, obviously I know, or I'm I've studied these companies for the last 8 years, right? I mean, they have broken pretty much every single law in the country, okay, from local, city, state, federal, okay?
Yeah, I was going to get to that.
Okay.
So what I was going to talk about next was like how enshittification works, and then why it's happening now. And
Let's do it.
The breaking the laws is sort of in the why it's happening now. So how does enshittification work? Like, what is it that makes enshittification possible? And it's because these services are digital. And so digital services have a flexibility that physical services do not. You can change the price and the wage and the other business dynamics from moment to moment on a per user basis. So every driver, you talked about algorithmic wage discrimination before. Every driver can get paid.
We've proven it. I mean, I'm sure Vina Dubal, right?
That's how I encountered you guys in the first place, was through
at LA Times, right? I mean,
actually,
Brian Merchant, good friend of ours from LA Times, used to be at LA Times. He said hello. He was on the show about his book.
I was just on stage with him
and stuff.
In
He
Rhode
calls
Island.
me cheap Luddite, so I'm like, okay, fine,
I'm a Luddite. That's fine.
There you go.
Being a Luddite is good. Algorithmic wage discrimination is not something that bosses before like didn't dream of, right? Or wouldn't have done if they could, right? Like, you listen to like Tennessee Ernie Ford songs about black-hearted coal bosses in West Virginia. I guarantee you those guys would have done algorithmic wage discrimination if they could have. But you just like, there isn't a room big enough to put enough guys in green eye shades in to do algorithmic wage discrimination with pens and ledgers, right? So it's like, you ever see someone throwing 3-card Monte or doing the cup and balls, right? The thing where they're hiding the P. So if you ever see it slowed down, there's a really good version of this where Penn and Teller slow it down, and they do it with transparent cups, so you can actually see the ball move, right? If you ever see it slowed down, it's not a complicated trick. It's actually a very simple trick, and the thing is that they do it fast. And so something done fast can seem complicated, but it's not. It's the quickness of the hand deceiving the eye here. And so because digital services have the ability to pump value from end users to business customers, from business customers to end users, from end users and business customers to shareholders, and they can do it really quickly back and forth, they're able to play the shell game really fast. Digital services have the fastest hands. So back to Facebook, right? So what Facebook did, not just to lure in business customers, when it was luring them in, it wasn't just advertisers. Also, obviously, it was publishers. And their pitch to publishers was a little like their pitch to advertisers. Like, hey, do you remember we told these suckers we were only going to show them the things that they asked to see? That was also a lie, right? Like, if you take like something from your website, like a little excerpt, and then a link back to your own website where you know how to make money from people who come and read it, whatever, you got your own ads, you got subscriptions. We're just going to like non-consensually cram it into the eyeballs of people who never asked to see it as a recommendation, right? And that's a free traffic funnel for you. You can make lots of money. So the publishers pile in, but then Facebook starts to twiddle the knob on the back end. They start to do something that looks an awful lot like algorithmic wage discrimination, where the amount of the article you have to post in order to get it recommended goes up and up and up. So, but then if a publisher goes, wait a second, this is turning into a substitute for visiting my website, not an enticement to visit my website, and they back off from the platform notices, right, just algorithmically, and dips into the supply of things that the publisher's already posted, turns the knob, and that publisher gets like 30 million views. And they're like, oh, wait a second, Facebook's amazing for my business. I'm coming back, right? This is exactly like algorithmic wage discrimination. And what it's doing is it's pitting the remorseless ability of an algorithm to make tiny adjustments against the clear inability of human beings to be eternally vigilant to notice those tiny adjustments, right? Like you can throw in a fishing line and you can get a fish on the line that's 3 times your weight. But because you can pay the line out and bring it back in and pay the line out and bring it back in, you can tire that fish out, right? The fish is stronger than you. Given some fish I've met and some people I've met, it might be smarter than you, but you can play the game. Right, you can play the game, and the fish can't. The fish is playing a losing game. So
Well,
this.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we take pride here, right? Because we call it a game, almost like a simulation, rideshare driving or any gig work, right? And if you do not play the game, look, obviously algorithms are faster, as you correctly stated. Things happen so much faster, but that's why there is a huge difference between like a 5% bottom driver versus top 5% in the exact same city. That top 5% guy is going to make 2x or 3x of what the bottom 5 is making because he's playing the game correctly.
Right. So put a pin in that because that's coming up in the next section. So the next section is, why are these companies all turning into shit right now? Right. So why is enshittification happening to Facebook, Amazon, Google, Uber, Lyft? You name the tech platform, they're all doing it right now. And so there's a lot of theories about this. So there was this thing, the zero interest rate policy, right, where government's basically making capital available at effectively for free. Maybe the fact that they turned off that spigot when they cranked up in interest rates is driving companies to be, more profit aware. Or maybe it's because these companies, they were founded by these heroic figures, Travis Kalanick, Larry and Sergey, Jeff Bezos. They were founded by these heroic figures who really cared about the business and making a good product, but they left and they got replaced by these like bloodless bean counters who are just trying to squeeze every nickel out of it. So that's another theory. There's also the theory that maybe Mercury is in retrograde. So I don't think any of these theories are right. So first of all, like, as you point out, Facebook started enshittifying long before the end of zero interest rate policy. And so did Uber. It was the IPO, not the end of ZERP that did it. There are companies that got worse when their founders came back, right? So like Google had this AI panic. Panic is what tech companies, they have a euphemism for it. They call it pivoting. But whenever they get freaked out, they panic and they go, we're going to have a pivot. So AI had this pivot, or Google had this pivot to AI, and Larry and Sergey came back and Google got like much worse very quickly. And, as to Mercury in retrograde, I'm a Cancer. And as everyone knows, Cancers don't believe in astrology. So it can't be that.
Well, but if you talk about Travis and then the transition to Dara Khosrowshahi, who came as a smoother operator, I look at him as exactly the same, because first of all, without Travis, there'd be no Uber, without a question, because he had this opinion or idea of, move fast, break things. We don't give a shit about any laws. We're just going to do what we're going to do. And then, he got kicked out, and Dara comes in. He's a smooth operator. He really is, actually. And he is the assassin with a smile. He goes, "Oh, I care about you, but I'm about to stab you in the neck."
Yeah,
I'm going, things, driver pay has gotten so much worse under Dara, right? But then they keep selling it. Oh, everything is wonderful. But
so it may be that his personality helps him sell it, but I don't think that's the cause. So I'm gonna tell you what I think the cause is. What actually changed to make all of these companies get shitty, and it's that companies would like, under the best of circumstances, to pay as little in wages as possible, to pay as little as possible to make their product or service, and to make as much as possible, charge as much as possible for that service. I think that's an uncontroversial statement, but they're constrained as to how they do that, right? So they might face competitors, right? So if they don't pay enough wages, their workers might go somewhere else. If they make a product that costs more or is worse, their customers might go somewhere else. And if they and so they're always sort of looking over their shoulder under normal conditions for competitors. But competition went away, right? So in until the Reagan years, we had this idea that the point of our competition law was to promote competition.
Yeah.
And in the Reagan years, this idea called consumer welfare took hold. And it basically says that if you see a monopoly in the wild or like a cartel, what you found isn't evidence that someone is cheating. It's evidence that someone's doing something really right. Like if everybody out there is buying everything from one store and they buy the same thing when they're there, that doesn't mean the store is cheating. That means the store has made the best store that sells the best product. Why would we want the government to come in and Bigfoot the people who did the thing that's best? That's not good for anyone. And so consumer welfareism has been like the dominant theory for 40 years. And what it meant is that we turned a blind eye while companies engaged in conduct that the letter of the law prohibits. So, you mentioned violating things like municipal statutes. These are much bigger laws. Like, so companies historically haven't been able to buy their rivals or snap up nascent companies before they could grow to be rivals. But this is, par for the course. Tim Cook buys 90 companies a year, right? He's bringing home a new company for shareholders more often than you're bringing home a bag of groceries for your family. You think about the string of acquisitions Uber made, companies that might have threatened them that they just snapped up, or Facebook, right? You see Instagram pop up. Users are fleeing Facebook in big numbers. So Mark Zuckerberg buys them up and then very unwisely sends an email to his CFO in the middle of the night, 12:30 at night, saying like, hey, I know you think we're paying too much for this company, but people don't like Facebook anymore and they like Instagram. We got to buy where they're going. As he had said it before in a memo, it's always better to buy than to compete. So companies are engaged in this sort of orgy of acquisitions. They become very incestuous, right? And they start to fence out competitors. And where a company doesn't want to sell, they do something else that is very close to the Uber playbook, which is predatory pricing. That's when you sell goods for less than they cost you. That's also illegal, right? Losing 41 cents on the dollar for 13 years is illegal, but we just hadn't enforced the law in 40 years.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, look, we do this show for the last 2 years, right? And we have busted them on so many things that to me it looks very illegal, right? I mean, I'm not a legal scholar by any means. However, the fact that the existing FTC or an algorithmic wage discrimination, or we call it shaving. I mean, they offer promotions, but then on one end they offer you, like the shell game that you said, right? They say, oh, we're going to give you $1 if you do an EV trip. If you buy a $50,000 EV and do an EV trip, we're going to give you $1. But while we're giving you the $1, on the other hand, we're going to lower the fare by 20 cents, and you're not even going to feel it, right? Times 2.5 billion trips, that's $500 million a quarter to them. So I'm just kind of shocked that regulators or whoever it may be, that they're not looked into these companies a lot more carefully, because we're looking at it and we're like, here's the proof. Here's our proof. Right?
So I'm going to talk about 3 different kinds of regulation here. So the first one is antitrust law. So this is the first constraint, is how antitrust law used to constrain companies and doesn't anymore. And so that's things like predatory pricing. That's things like anti-competitive acquisitions and mergers, right? So that's stage 1. And when you do that, it sets the stage for the next form of regulatory capture, which is getting into what you're talking about here, which is as the number of companies in a sector goes down, the ability of those companies to, first of all, get lots of profits because they're not engaged in wasteful competition. Peter Thiel is the principal investor in Lyft. He's very famous for saying competition is for losers, right? So they're not engaged in wasteful competition. So they're retaining more of that income rather than spending it on driver wages to keep the drivers loyal, or splitting the difference with the passengers to keep the passengers loyal. Like if you remember, Lily Tomlin used to do this bit on Saturday Night Live where she'd pretend to be a phone operator for AT&T, and she'd do ads. And every one of these ads that she would turn to the camera and she would say, "We don't care. We don't have to. We're the phone company." Yeah. Right. So when these companies become big, they don't have to compete, and they're able to each retain more earnings. So this is true across the board. But there's another thing that happens when companies don't have to compete, which is that it's easy for them to come to an agreement. So remember how you and your 6 friends in the group chat can't agree on where to go for dinner, and you and your 200 friends can't agree on how to leave Facebook. Well, when there's only 5 companies in a sector, they can totally agree on what to tell Congress, or what to tell a regulator, or what to tell the European Union. And so they're solving this collective action problem. Like, you may remember in the early 2000s, there was the Napster wars, right? So
Yeah.
you had like these entertainment companies. There's about 7 of them. They're all headquartered within a couple of miles where you and I live here. And then there were a couple of hundred tech companies. And the tech companies in aggregate were about 100 times larger than those 7 entertainment companies. But the tech companies had no message discipline, because 200 companies can't agree on what to tell Congress. They can't even agree on like where to hold a meeting or how to cater it so that they can discuss what to tell Congress. Any industry that dwindles to like 5 companies, all of those leaders can fit around a single table. And if they can, they will. And so,
well, I mean, in RideShare, we have 2 companies. That's it. That's all we have.
Right. And not only that,
that's why they can do whatever they want. I mean,
but they've converged also on a set of identical terms. So as a passenger, if I say, okay, I'm going to either book a Lyft or an Uber, the price is the same for both.
Pretty much.
Right. And as a driver, the wage is the same for both. There are minor variations, but in the same way that the duopoly of Apple, Google charges every app vendor the same 30%, right? This is not what we think of as competition. This is a lot more like how your cable company works, where like Charter and Comcast divide up the country like the Pope dividing up the New World. And it's like, we're going to take this territory, you're going to take that territory. We're never going to compete head to head. So they're not really competitors. So this is how you get firms that are able to say, we're breaking the law, but it doesn't matter because we did it with an app. So this is different from the antitrust stuff. The antitrust stuff is, we're breaking the law, but it doesn't matter because the law is stupid and we don't enforce the law anymore. This is different. They're saying, we're violating your privacy, but we did it with an app. It doesn't matter. We're violating your labor rights. We did it with an app. It doesn't matter. Amazon. So Amazon has a $38 billion a year advertising business, but it's not advertising the way you and I think about it. What they're selling is search placement. So when you search Amazon for a product, the top box, the top left box, the first position in the buy box, on average is 29% more expensive than the best deal on Amazon. The top row is 25% more expensive than the best deal on Amazon. On average, you have to go 17 places down to get the best deal on Amazon, right? So if you walked into a store, if you walked into Best Buy and you were like, give me your cheapest Duracells, and instead they gave you batteries that weren't Duracells that cost 30% more, you could sue them, right? The Attorney General would send them a nasty letter. Do it with an app, and it doesn't matter because we did it with an app.
Well, but I agree with you like 1,000,000% here, because all these Uber and Lyft, right? And most of these gig companies, they sell themselves as SaaS, or, we're a software platform. We have nothing to do with transportation. I'm going like, how does that, why isn't Uber, like I've always called Uber, a cab company with an app. I mean,
of course
you're taking me from point A to point B, sir. I'm not sure why you're not transportation company.
No, of course. That's all Uber is. So this is the second piece, right? So you have regulatory capture. But then we come to the third piece, and this is where you were talking about how gig drivers are, if they're smart, they can get better deals out of the algorithm. They can play the algorithm back. Ultimately, that's a game you're going to lose. But you don't have to lose it, because you don't need to manually try to outguess the algorithm. There's no reason that you couldn't have an app that tried to outguess the algorithm. So like gig riders in Indonesia, they have these apps called Tuyul apps, Tuyul. I don't know if you've encountered this in your gig economy research. It's where they
not, but I you go ahead and then I'll come up with
so
what they have.
They pay third-party technologists to write mods that overlay the apps, like what Pero is doing with the Doordash app.
Yes.
So like if you're picking up from a train station in Indonesia, you don't want to be outside the train station when the train comes in. It's like it's a death trap, right? What you want to do is wait around the corner for someone to like book the ride, and then you want to drive in and get them. But the ride won't give you a fare unless you're in front of the app won't give you a fare unless you're right in front of the train station. So the drivers have got Tuyul apps that let them spoof the GPS. Yeah. So they tell they tell their phone to tell the company, I'm directly in front of the train station, but they're actually waiting around the corner. And this is a better deal for everyone. So you could just mod the app. So you could do something like you remember on Doordash, there was a campaign for Dashers not to take rides unless they reached a certain threshold, right? Decline all rides below a certain threshold.
Right.
Why should you have to do that manually? Why couldn't all the Uber drivers who meet each other, waiting at the airport kiss and ride lot, just say, hey, have you heard there's this app? You turn it on, and nobody takes a ride until the wage bid up for the app is a certain per mile per minute, right? And you could just have a thing like, because it's not a sophisticated trick, it's just a fast trick. You could have a fairly unsophisticated app that just outdoes it. But here's
we
why
do
you
have
can't.
we do have apps like that, except that the problem within the US, for one reason or another, unlike Indonesia, you could spoof your GPS with Uber as well. I mean, I'm not going to say I did it, but all I know is that they have become so sophisticated, Cory, that their algos figure out your elevation level, right? So if you're like spoofing your GPS when you're on top of Sunset and then you're going to LAX, well, the app figures out, well, top of Sunset and LAX is a water level, Sunset is 1,000 foot high. You can't be both places at once. And guess what they'll do? They'll do something called deactivate you, which is
they'll
fire
blacklist
you.
you.
Fire you.
Yeah.
No, literally fire you. That's what's fire.
Yeah. So look,
can't fight it.
It's because they're more sophisticated, and I don't think you can't fight it. I think, because remember I talked about how digital technology has this flexibility, right? So like, here's a little computer science jargon. The only computer that we know how to make is something called the Turing complete universal von Neumann machine. It's a lot of jargon that just means the only computer we know how to make is a computer that can run every single program, not just the programs that Uber wants your phone to run, not just the program that HP wants your printer to run. All programs can be run on all computers, which means that you can always undo this. Now, it may be that they've instituted some checks, but here's the real reason that you can't build an app that counter twiddles the twiddling that Uber is doing, that undoes the algorithmic wage discrimination. It's because regulatory capture is not just the right to ignore the law, it's the right to invoke the law against your competitors. And over the last 40 years, we've seen a monotonic expansion of IP rights. So, for example, there's a law called the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, or DMCA. You're probably familiar with it because, like, this video has been removed thanks to a claim under the DMCA, right? So DMCA is a big, gnarly hairball of copyright law signed by Bill Clinton. Section 1201 of the DMCA makes it a felony punishable by a 5-year prison sentence and a $500,000 fine to reverse engineer anything that has a digital lock on it. And so the reason that you're getting these like kind of half-assed GPS spoofs instead of these purpose-built things is because if you wanted to reverse engineer the Uber app, it would be illegal. So we have this thicket of IP laws, patents, copyrights, trademarks, tortious interference with contract, and so on. This is the ability of firms to mobilize the state in the form of IP enforcement against people who do things that would otherwise be legal, but that displease their shareholders. A guy called Jay Freeman, who built an alternative app store for iOS, he calls it felony contempt of business model, right? And so if a company is not constrained by competition or by regulation or by the fear that their Uber drivers will make a counter app, or, here's an example. Imagine you're around a boardroom table and you're doing the product planning meeting for your website. And someone says, fellas, I've had a realization. We all get paid based on like the net return from our advertising. And if we can increase our advertising by 2%, we all get a big bonus. We get to take ski holidays in France. I think we could get 2% more out of our advertisers if we made the advertisements 20% more obnoxious, right? Now you say that, and someone else around the table, someone who doesn't give a shit about the users, still puts their hand up and says, I like how you're thinking, but has it occurred to you that if we make the ads 20% more obnoxious, then 40% of our users are going to go to the search engine. They're going to type in, how do I block ads? And when that happens, the revenue per user, it's not 100%. It's not 102%. It's zero forever, right? Because no one's going back to the search engine to type, how can I start seeing ads again? So you agree you're not going to make the ads worse. But then they say, okay, next order of business, how about the app? And the guy who's running the meeting turns to the guy who put his hand up and says, I bet you're going to say we shouldn't make the ads 20% more obnoxious on the app either. The guy says, you're right. I think we should make them 100% more obnoxious, because we don't care if someone goes and types, how do I block ads on the app? Because the answer is it's a felony to make an ad blocker for an app. And the answer is you can't. We don't have to care. We're the mobile phone company. This is why every company wants you to use their apps and not their websites. Because an app is just a euphemism for a website skinned in enough IP to make it a felony to modify it so it's good for you, but bad for the company that made it. It's a way to invoke felony contempt of business model.
Yeah, this is
So,
amazing, amazing information coming from you. So I will have a few more minutes remaining, but I want
sure.
to look, as rideshare drivers,
Hmm.
we're all nervous about. In fact, I took a Waymo trip a couple of weeks ago, right?
Hmm.
Autonomous vehicles, AI,
Hmm.
it's all coming. We're all going to lose our jobs. I don't think so. I think it's like bullshit of all bullshits. More upside down in economics, actually unit economics, than Uber ever was.
Sure.
And then now we actually made fun of them last week that burritos are being carried. Uber Eats burritos are being carried by Waymo cars that are $300,000 a pop. You know what I mean? I'm going like, but our audience they ask me the questions and I'll just relay the question. They go like, are we all going to get replaced by Waymo or Cruise, or now Tesla is getting into the
Yeah.
ride share business or whatever? What is your opinion about
Here's
that?
the
Should we
thing
all
you
get
have to
nervous?
understand. Yeah. So here's the thing you have to understand is that the risk isn't that someone's going to invent a self-driving car that can do your job as well as you can. The risk is that someone will make a self-driving car that is absolutely unsuited to being on the streets, and your boss is going to fire you and buy a self-driving car instead. Right. Like,
There you go.
so we worry a lot about like AI disinformation and the elections. And like, we don't really have an active and present AI disinformation in the elections problem. Like, there've been some other elections that have had a little issues with this, the Czech elections and stuff, but it's not really a big issue. We do have a bunch of AI problems though, right? Like,
Yeah,
algorithmic wage discrimination, algorithms that decide whether you're eligible for bail, algorithms that decide whether you can get a loan, algorithms that decide whether, to match your face and tell the cops that you did a crime. All of those are like serious problems with algorithms. And here's the difference, right? Is there is no um, line of business projected by AI companies that's based on AI disinformation. And so they would like it for us to get really worried about AI disinformation and to ban AI disinformation because it's not going to cost them a dime. They don't have like a sales guy who's out there like pitching AI disinformation as the next big lead gen for them, right? They do, on the other hand, get very scared if you talk about things like these don't work, right? These
yeah,
shouldn't be used in any high stakes circumstance, like self-driving cars or like self-driving system of justice or like self-driving loan approval or self-driving radiographic analysis of a chest x-ray, right? Those are things that it's absolutely unsuited to do. And that does undermine their bottom line. So the
yeah,
kind of AI disinformation that I think we should really be worried about is the AI disinformation that convinces your boss, who is insatiably horny for firing you and replacing you with a computer program,
yeah,
that AI is good enough to do your job, whether or not it's good enough to do your job. So you
yeah,
should be scared, right? You should be scared that your boss thinks that the AI is good enough to do your job, will fire you and replace you with an AI, but not because the AI is good at its job. And we need to stop going out there and saying the AI is going to take my job, because every time you do that, you make the share price of the AI company go up,
yeah,
because that is a thing that they're actually selling. What you have to say is the AI can't do my job and they're going to replace me with it. That's
yeah.
the thing that makes the share price go down.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on that as well. I think it's so overhyped because I have a Wall Street background. I was on Wall Street for 23 years as a derivatives and equities trader. I
Uh-huh.
look at some of these AI stocks. I'm going like, this is not the tulip of tulips. I don't know what the heck it is. I don't know. They're
Sure.
just kind of selling some song and a dance. But look, I mean, I can talk to you all day, and then I'm promising you, I'm going to buy you lunch whenever you're in town in
Okay.
Burbank. We'll find an Armenian. I'm Armenian, so we'll find a
Okay.
Middle Eastern restaurant if you're in
I'd
that
heard
kind of
that
thing.
there was an Armenian person living in Burbank. It's great to meet you.
Thanks. Hey, we're taking over Granada Hills. I'm in Granada Hills, so
Well,
we're all
I'm from
like
Toronto, which is like the other. It's like the suburb of
Canadian
Glendale.
version. Yeah, but so we have a few minutes remaining. Look, we're rideshare drivers. We're simple-minded people, right? And well, not really, but we like to post ourselves as
Sure.
such, and then hammer these people, these companies on a weekly basis. Give us some advice. Give our audience some advice. What this you talked about enshittification. You talked about how we can end it, right? And then close your hour here. Give us some
Yeah.
sage advice.
Well, so you were saying the FTC hasn't done anything, the DOJ hasn't done anything, and that is true broadly speaking. From the Carter administration through the Trump administration, the regulators were asleep, right? They just oversaw this like orgy of law breaking that made everything about our world worse and put us in the most dire of straits. But a remarkable thing happened in 2020, and let me start by saying that I'm a naturalized American citizen. It was the first election I was allowed to vote in. I donated to 4 different Democrats for president. None of them were Biden. I'm not a Biden guy, right? Nevertheless, I have been shocked, delighted, amazed, sometimes even elated by the competition and corporate anti-corporate wrongdoing policies of the Biden administration. We have seen more action taken on breaking up monopolies and ending regulatory capture in the last 3 years than we saw in the 40 years before it. We have transformative leadership. They're trying to break up Google. They're trying to break up Amazon. They're trying to break up Facebook. They went after Adobe. They're going after all of these giant companies. They blocked the Spirit JetBlue merger. They blocked the Simon & Schuster Penguin Random House merger. You talk to people who are in mergers and acquisitions, and they'll say, we don't even try, because we get around the boardroom table. And it used to be the last question we'd ask is, what about the FTC? And then we'd all chuckle and go, yeah, all right, we're going ahead with this. Now, the first question we ask is, what about the FTC? And then we go, I guess it's meeting adjourned. So we're living under a transformative moment here. And there is a concerted propaganda campaign on the part of monopolists and the people who get rich from them to convince you that nothing's happening. The Wall Street Journal has run 100 editorials complaining that Lena Khan, the chairwoman of the Federal Trade Commission, isn't getting anything done. Look, Rupert Murdoch does not pay the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal to write 100 editorials about someone who's not getting anything done. Right? That's not how that guy rolls. Right? So, whatever else is going on in our politics, which I will freely stipulate are a goddamn cesspit, we are at a moment where there is more support for unionization, more support for getting money out of politics, more support for breaking up corporate power than there's ever been. And normally it's hard to know what to do, but the FTC is doing these like listening tours. The DOJ is soliciting comments. The National Labor Review Board is doing work. Our Labor Relations Board is doing work. The Consumer Finance Protection Bureau is doing work like we've never seen. CFPB, the chair, Rohit Chopra, just gave a speech where he said, yeah, so the next thing I'm going to do is ban data brokers. We're just going to make them illegal.
Yep.
Right? So like we haven't had a new privacy law in this country since 1988. The last privacy law we got, consumer privacy law we got, bans video store clerks from telling someone what VHS cassettes you rent. Right? That's the last time we got a new federal privacy law. Like a lot of this stuff, algorithmic wage discrimination, the stuff that they're doing, gray balling, all that stuff just is like a privacy violation. Yeah. You ban surveillance conduct, and all that stuff just kind of goes out the window. The thing where they're measuring your elevation from your phone and getting your phone to rat you out, that should just be illegal. Like, why is your phone telling Dara how high above sea level it is? It's none of his goddamn business.
I agree. And let's finish with this. I mean, hopefully we're going to interview Dara shortly, and we're going to interview actually David Risher, the CEO of Lyft, coming up, hopefully in May sometime.
Ask him if he thinks competition is for losers, and if not, whether he's going to give Peter Thiel his money back.
He's going to try, but it's not going to be one of his Wall Street puff piece interviews. It's going to be here. But if you were to speak to them, what would you tell Dara and David Risher, the CEOs of Uber and Lyft, that we kind of are working for these days? Really, what would you tell them?
So there's a part of me that says, like, I got nothing to say to those guys. There's this great Noam Chomsky interview where the reporter is like, you tell everyone that, like, I get told what to say by my bosses, and no one's ever told me what to say. And Chomsky's like, no, you've misunderstood me. I don't think you get told what to say. I think that if you were the kind of person who didn't say what they wanted to hear, that you wouldn't be sitting in that chair. Like, Dara is who he is, right? Like, he's doing the thing that he is that the shareholders want him to do. So this is the thing that's really important to understand about this constraint-based analysis of enshittification. It's not that the people got worse; they've always been scum, and it's not that it's not that like the world suddenly became more tolerant of this. It's that every day of these guys' life for the last 40 years since the Reagan administration, they've gone into the office and their only job is to go to the giant lever on the wall marked enshittification and shove it as far up as it will go. Yeah. But for 40 years, it didn't go very far because competition held it in check. Regulation held it in check. Self-help held it in check. When tech workers were powerful before we did 260,000 tech layoffs last year, tech workers held it in check. So now that same guy marches into the office like he's done every day for 40 years, and he takes the lever and it goes all the way up. It goes to full enshittification. And it's not because he, had like a kind of heel turn, right? Or like a stroke that turned him from a hero who wanted to deliver things we liked into a villain who wanted to take it all away. It's because the things that held that guy in check are gone.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, I don't have much to say to him. On the other hand, I would ask him, like, are you a capitalist? Do you think that you should take risks? Like, do you think that if someone does something that, counters your plans, like makes an app that lets your drivers figure out, what wage is being offered and coordinate to demand a different wage, that the government should step in and say, oh, you've got an IP right to stop people from doing that. And that you don't have to, and that so you as a firm don't have to take the risk that someone will make a better technology that gives your workforce a better deal. Because if you don't believe in taking risks, you're not a capitalist, you're a feudalist.
Well, that's what they do, though. I mean, in finishing, I'm behind legislation in a bunch of cities. And, this is, as I'm sure it's happening in Minneapolis, right? City Council of Minneapolis. They push back with all the 4 levers, to push back on enshittification. And then Uber and Lyft goes, we're going to leave now. We're not happy about it.
They did that in Austin, too. So
yeah, I know.
Either the drivers will start a co-op and buy an app because it's not rocket surgery, or the companies will come back. Both of those things happen in Austin, by the way.
Yeah.
So
I follow it. I know it. But okay, in finishing, I want to thank you. I really do.
Oh, thank you.
I want you to come back. I mean, but the reason I want you to come back is because I don't think we can solve this in like one single hour, right?
No.
And there's so much. I mean, your life's work went into this, has gone into this, and I want to honor you, obviously. And open invitation to you. I don't say this to every guest. I don't say it to every guest, and Chris knows it. And open invitation to you because you're so real and you're so in tune with what's going on that.
Thank you.
Again, here's Cory Doctorow. All his links and his bio is in the show notes. Please go visit him. Please read everything he's written. You don't have to agree with him, but what you have to do is you have to understand where he's coming from. And, much love. Thank you.
Are you saying that a reasonable person could possibly disagree with me? I don't see how that could be true.
Well, few people disagree with you, I'm pretty sure, but isn't it all about that though, right? We disagree, we agree to disagree, and we just kind of civilly discuss and argue things, which also has left the building a long time ago, which is like, I'm like, what's going on here? But again, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Sergio.
I appreciate your time.
All right. Nice to talk to you guys.
All right. Take care.
All right, thanks, Cory.
Bye.
All right, thanks for watching. That short little clip was from our live stream, Show Me the Money Club with Sergio and myself, Tuesdays, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. Make sure you subscribe, turn on all notifications so you'll be notified when we go live, as well as all of our awesome content. Make sure to check out this video right here, which will take you to the entire live stream, or check out this video right there. All right, drive smart, everyone.